For the first time ever in a Schoolbox Meetup, we have invited some students. We have 5 students coming from Melbourne Girls Grammar, Emily Walters, Scarlett White, Amelia Banks, Kiara Willemane, sorry for the spelling, Chloe Adnams, and then we have Ryan Bowler acting head of drama behind me. And we have Emma Inturisi, drama teacher. So they are going to give us a bit of a session in the shape of a Q&A around how they are using self-assessment and self-reflection in the school and how it's helping them in their education. So over to you guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We might just introduce ourselves just in case you need to know the students' names, in case you have a question for them at the end of today's session. So firstly, as we introduced, my name is Ryan Bowler and this is Emma Inturisi, and together we make up half of the drama department at Melbourne Girls Grammar, so it's our pleasure to be here today. And we now also have our 5 amazing students who, although we're nervous, they're probably even more nervous to be in front of a room this big and of older people. So we'll introduce them now.
So we've got Chloe in Year 10, we've got Amelia, Emily, Scarlett and Kiara in Year 7.
Cool. So I wanted to give you a bit of a background first, I guess, in terms of the journey that we've been on as a drama department at Melbourne Girls Grammar over the last couple of years, and what self-assessment and self-reflection means to us inside the classroom and also outside the classroom. So in middle and senior years drama, students are asked to step out from behind a desk and make themselves seen. They are asked to be vulnerable and to be open. They develop key skills in collaboration, including teamwork and negotiation. They analyse and evaluate their own devised works and works of professional theatre companies. But we don't expect our drama students to be the next Meryl Streep or Cate Blanchett. But what we do expect of them is to engage both critically and creatively, but not just with the coursework and activities before them, but with themselves as learners. Drama practice, whether it be in a professional, amateur or school setting, is inherently reflective. It's what artists do. Actors, theatre makers, directors, producers and designers do not simply put on a production or produce a piece of work and then move on once the curtain is closed. Nor do they just debrief or reflect after the end product is realised. Instead, they reflect throughout the process to critically analyse and evaluate their performance, to refine their craft, and deliver the best possible outcome for themselves and their audience. So we're not all drama teachers here today, so let's now remove the theatrics. Let's put this now in the context of schools. Students should not just produce a piece of work or complete an assessment task and move on once the test results have come back. Students should not just reflect after the end of a summative assessment task. Instead, students should be reflecting throughout the process, leading them to think critically about their learning, to refine their knowledge and skills, and deliver the best possible outcome for themselves. Since the beginning of 2016, the drama department at Melbourne Girls Grammar has undertaken a transformational shift from focusing on results-based learning to growing our students' understanding of process-based learning. Of course, we still have the product at the end of each unit of work, as it allows the students to showcase their newly acquired skills and knowledge. But for students to understand the process it took to get them there is more important to us than the final grade on a written report. So in 2016, we began to incorporate journaling into every drama class from years 5 to 12. In these journals, students answer key reflective and analytical questions throughout the unit and set individual, personalised learning goals for themselves. These goals vary from lesson, weekly or term-based goals, but what we found was that the students' goals would always be results-focused. For example, by the end of this term, I want to achieve an A. Don't we all want to achieve an A? Students are used to results-based learning, but process-based learning can be an unfamiliar concept and something that has to be explicitly taught. When students would write, "I want to achieve an A," we begun to break that down with them, not for them. So we'd ask things like, well, what does an A look like to you? The answer may have been, well, to achieve an A, I will need to think about my use of voice to create a character. But notice how that goal still started with the result as the main focus, well, to achieve an A. So we now go one step further. How can we change our voice to become a character, the teacher might ask. The response from the student may be, well, I can work on my pitch, pace and tone to show a character's personality. And there we have the outline of our goal. So throughout the unit, students would reflect on their progress in relation to their big picture goal. And in between this, students would still think about what they wanted to achieve during particular lessons and work collaboratively with others on a plan to achieve these smaller goals. At the end of a unit, which for us runs across a term, once the practical component was done, students then completed their written analysis and reflection task. In all of our middle years classes, so years 5 to 8, we focus on a 70% practical work and 30% written work framework, with the written work comprising of analytical and reflective-based questions. Questions for the written work could include, how did you and your group work cooperatively throughout this process, and how did you overcome challenges? Or if you were to offer advice to a student entering your year level next year and undertaking this unit, what 3 suggestions would you offer to them to make this process easier and why? Of course, due to reporting guidelines, these written responses are graded. However, along with the grade the students receive, they can now look back on their writing and see the documentation of their practical growth throughout the unit of work. Halfway through 2018, when we noticed that the self-reflection and self-assessment tool was available through Schoolbox, and we call it Evie, so in case you hear us refer to Evie throughout, we're referring to Schoolbox, we decided to implement it. When thinking about how we could use this tool, it was decided that it would not be used as a replacement to our current reflective practices, but instead to complement it and sit alongside it. In a moment, we'll get the students' perspective on what self-reflection and self-assessment means to them, because that's why you're all here in this room today. But from a teacher's perspective, within our subject, we now have the following. We have goal setting and journaling throughout each unit, students documenting a personalised individual learning plan, students now critically engaging with their individual progress, students self-assessing their work to think critically about the result of their efforts, and students reflecting on their learning and not their grade. And isn't that what learning should be? Let's now have a look at what self-reflection and self-assessment looks like within Evie. So this is a Year 6 written assessment task. The unit was titled For the Right to Learn, where students learn about the remarkable story of Malala Yousafzai and use her story as a stimulus to explore the concept of education for all. When the student here, Tara, and Tara was meant to join us today, but unfortunately she's ill, when she submitted this written task, Evie prompted her to self-assess on the rubric and to provide herself with some written feedback, which isn't shown here. We can see that Tara has actually marked herself in the 3rd column for each criteria. When we receive Tara's submission, we see her submission, her self-assessed rubric, and an overall comment on why she marked herself the way that she did, and a comment that reflects on the overall process she undertook in that unit. But what we can see here is that Tara believes she performed lower than what her teacher believes she did. But from this information, we then encourage Tara to begin to understand why she marked herself that particular way, and actually acknowledge that she's done some tremendous work throughout this unit and with this assessment task. And we're going to discuss getting a mark back and the way the students assess themselves in a moment. So that's enough from me, and I hope that gives you a round introduction as to how we use self-reflection and assessment within the drama classroom at MGGS. And I'll now hand over to Emma to begin the student discussion.
All right, girls, so what is the difference between self-reflection and self-assessment?
So
To you.
So to me, self-reflection would be more reflecting and looking at the process, that and the journey that you took to get to the final product. And self-assessment would be more the critiquing and analysing of the final product, and basically building on that and understanding what you did and how you did things to get to a certain point.
Self-reflection to me, like Chloe said, you know, analysing the process and understanding, you know, what you did to get to your final product and how that affected you, but also your final product as a whole. Whereas self-assessment is the more critical side of looking back at what you've done and understanding what you need to do better and improve to make your final product even more good, I suppose.
Going on what Chloe and Emily both said, for me, it kind of, the difference is using those mistakes as a base and like as a foundation to get better next time, and just so you can do the best you can possibly can.
To me, self-assessment bases off more criterias and what we focused on for the term, and you base yourself off that rubric. But when you self-reflect, it's more your thoughts and what you want to work on for the year and make goals for yourself.
So to me, self-reflection is really looking at it as a personalised recount on how you've felt and how you've undergone this process, with the assessment being more criteria-based, how you've achieved certain things and how you can improve later in the process. And yeah.
Good. Okay, so what kinds of activities... Yep, give them a clap. What kinds of activities do you do in drama to self-reflect?
So in year 10, we do this thing called independent elaboration after we do an in-class task or something. And it's usually a couple questions just making you think and continue your thinking from the process and the task we did in class. And so it's a really good reflective source because it's making you recount what you did and understand why you did specific things and what the outcome and gain from those specific things are.
So in year 7, and I know in year 5 and 6, we do these things called blog entries. And they're a bit of like an immediate recount after a lesson and what you've done, and looking back on that and actually taking the time to understand what you've done and how it's affected your learning and your improvement.
Well, sometimes we could do peer-based feedback, where like other people, your other classmates, give you 2 things that you've done well and 1 thing that you could improve on, and it really gives you a perspective on what other people see you as. Like, it's very different to what you see yourself as and what other people see you as. So it's really helpful to see what other people see you as.
What Scarlett said, I'm working off that. We do a lot of group-based work, and we can give each other tips on what they can work on next time, as they saw you off as an audience, and we see different things as an actor, so if you see what the audience sees, then it's much more helpful to actually get goals.
Amelia, do you want to talk about Vimeo?
Oh yes, definitely. So Vimeo is a tool that we use to record our performances, and it's really handy because we can access them after we've done our performance, and it really allows us to go in depth from the audience's perspective and just look at how we've done, how we could improve, and it's just probably like one of the best reflection tools like ever.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yep.
Going on from Vimeo, they make it so you have a password, so only the students can access that, which is really good because then you can just let yourself go and you don't have to worry about some random person on the internet stumbling across your performance from grade 10 drama. And it's really good because if you're answering questions about that performance, say it's an analysis or reflection from that and it's graded, if you want to go to a specific moment that you thought maybe you could have improved on or you thought it was really good, you can just go back to that point and see what actually happened from the audience perspective, and yeah, it's just really helpful.
So before the online versions of self-assessment and self-reflection, what had you done previously?
So back in my day, when I was in year 7, we would be given a hard copy of paper with questions and we would write down the answer in pen or whatever. And basically people would just copy each other's answers and just try to get it out of the way as soon as possible. And we would be given the hard copy rubric on how to get the result we wanted. But people would just put that in the recycling bin straight away. They just wouldn't visit it at all. Whereas now, when we have the online version, it's there constantly and like you can't lose it. You can just go online onto the EV page whenever you want. And the online version, you actually refer to the rubric, and if you're doing a written piece, for example, if you feel like, oh, I don't know if I remembered everything, you can just go back and easily check if you've got everything that is required to achieve the grade or result you want. And so yeah, it's just easier and you're less likely to lose anything, and it just gives you a better opportunity to do your very best. So,
what are the benefits of seeing your own mark compared to the mark the teacher has given you?
Well, most people grade themselves lower than the teacher does, because it's like, oh, even if you think you deserve 100%, you would still do 75 or 80 because it's a confidence issue. It's like you don't want to sound too cocky, or what if you get graded lower? But since we go lower and the teacher grades higher than we usually do, it's almost a confidence boost, and it's this source of validation basically that they think you're better than you think you are. And so it's really uplifting, and it actually helps you do better next time because you have this confidence, and it's this really positive cycle basically.
Seeing the comparison of the two grades, I think, also helps you understand what you actually need to improve on, because like Chloe was saying, with the confidence issue that a lot of the girls at MGGS have, if you think that you haven't done as well as you actually have, understanding that can be achieved by looking at what the teachers have given you.
Yeah, going on what Emily said, you can kind of see, oh, okay, I thought I did bad in this, and the teacher didn't. So it really makes you think, oh, there might be a different perspective, not what you think it's all about. You might think completely different to what it actually is like. So it's really helpful to also see just like, oh, okay, I thought I did that good in that, and so did my teacher. So it just gives you a good comparison to really find the depths of what you need to work on and what you've done good on, so you can do the same next time or improve.
The two compared is like an actor and an audience's perspective. So if they're really similar, then you're really accurate to what the audience saw, but it's much better to see what other people see, so you can really improve on your whatever skill you would like to improve on.
As Chloe said about it being more of a confidence boost thing to mark yourself lower than you think you actually may have achieved, you might see a recurring theme that you're marking yourself consistently lower than what your teacher usually marks you as. So I guess that also gives you the confidence and sort of strength to actually think, oh yeah, I actually did really well in that. I'm going to put myself in this certain box, I guess.
So girls, what would happen if the opposite happened? So if your teacher sort of marked you a little bit lower than what you gave yourself, what would happen then?
Well, there were basically two ways you could handle that. You could take it as an insult, or you could feel really disappointed because it's like, oh, I thought I deserved this, but it turns out I got this. So you could either take it in a bad way, or you could say, well, maybe I actually do need to improve in that area, and then that can be your core focus for your next task, because there's always room for improvement in pretty much everything. And there's like heaps of things you could do. You could talk to your teacher, you could really focus on it. And yeah, so it's more the way you look at it, which changes your perspective basically on if it's good or bad.
I think, well, I mean, like Chloe was saying about how, you know, it kind of lowers your confidence a bit. But I think also the next time that you self-assess, you will find that you'll be, you know, assessing yourself lower. And then I think, you know, you might be getting a better score than you got previously because you'd be more worried about, you know, how well you were doing.
It sometimes makes people try that much harder next time. It gives you that like boost that, okay, next time I want to get a good mark. So it really just gives you like that boost, that extra boost that sometimes you need to do the best you possibly can.
I think if this happens, then it gives you sort of a base to work off next time to make yourself a better performer. So whatever you got marked low on, you really think about what you want to do next time to improve your performance.
As Chloe said, it's really about how you take it, like if you take it personally or just as you would with any other feedback. And it's just really a perspective thing.
Okay, so girls, talk a little bit about how it's no longer grade focused, the rubrics, but more comment based focused.
So during the process of creating this piece and reflecting while you're creating it, you kind of pick up on things that, oh, I'm doing this really well. And it actually changes your mindset when you're thinking more about, okay, I really want to improve my facial expressions instead of I really want to get an A+ or 100%. Because while you're doing the rehearsals and the planning of it, you're not so much focused on, guys, is this going to get an A? You're more focused on, guys, is this a really good performance that we're going to enjoy and we're going to be really proud of? And yeah, it just overall makes everything more enjoyable, and it just makes everything feel more positive, basically. Instead of, we have to get an A, it's more, do we want to be proud of this?
Going off a grade base for your final product kind of puts more focus on the product rather than, you know, focusing on yourself as, you know, an individual in drama. And, you know, all efforts are focused on, you know, doing the best you could possibly ever do in your final product rather than, you know, focusing on techniques and skills that, you know, the teachers in drama are, you know, all about.
It makes you feel more personal. It feels like it's more personal, less than just, yay, I got an A or something like that. It feels like, okay, they've actually thought about it. They've actually put time, and it makes you feel like, okay, maybe I should put time into this as well. It just makes you be a better learner and do it better next time.
It's really helpful to have a comment in words of what you want to work on next time, instead of looking at the criteria or the grade and thinking, oh, well, I don't need to work on that anymore. It's easier when you have words of what, an understanding of what you need to work on next time.
As they say, quality over quantity. So you don't necessarily want the best grade. You want the best process, the most enjoyable process. And as Kiki said, you want to look at the feedback, not necessarily how you marked, because the mark doesn't really show you what you can improve on. It's really the feedback that shows you that, and that's probably the most important part.
So do you think that self-reflecting and self-assessing has improved your learning in drama now, girls?
Yes, definitely. I have found myself really motivated because of self-reflection, basically, and I found myself really just happier in general, which sounds strange, but it's like you have this control over yourself almost, and you have this perspective of, is this going well? Is this not going well? And it's throughout the entire process, not just at the end. And you just have this mindset of, in my reflection, what will I be talking about? And so you're just more aware, and that has made me a much better performer because I'm constantly thinking about, is this really the best it could be? Or could I improve this in, and like I refer back to the rubric and like, no, this would be here. I want it to be here. I want it to be a much better quality.
I think for me, enjoyment of drama has just gone through the roof. Because, I mean, at one of my previous schools, doing the performing arts and not having this idea of self-assessment and self-reflection, I didn't really understand what, focusing on myself as an individual and what I needed to work on was. And it was more, the enjoyment of doing the final product and performing rather than working on skills. And I found that kind of thing really, really boring. But now, I feel like I'm, becoming a better person in drama, and I'm improving so much more.
Absolutely. For me, it's that confidence boost. It's like the motivation that I need to do the best I possibly can. It makes me feel, I can do this. It's possible. It's not like, oh yeah, I can do this. It's like, I can do this, and I'm going to.
I think without self-reflection and self-assessment, everything would be too vague for me to understand what I need to work on next time. It would just be like getting a grade and not knowing what to do next. It's just go on to the next performance, get the grade back. But with this, you can actually give yourself the time and effort to complete more things.
It has a really positive impact just on you as a whole, and as Scarlett said, it gives you that motivation to keep on going and being like, I can do this. And I guess without it, you're sort of just there, and it's vague, as you said, Kiara, and you don't really have the enjoyment of it, and it's just another subject. But with the self-assessment, self-reflection, it's just, as Em said, positivity gone through the roof.
All right, I think that's it. Belle, did you want to ask some questions?
So the teacher in me couldn't let 5 students come up here and not want to pump them with questions, but I'm sure you will agree they have done an amazing job. So I guess of all the questions I had, there's really only one left that I really would like them to focus in on. Girls, what aspects of self-reflection and self-assessment would you like to change? I've gone for the hard-hitting question.
Like, overall, I really like it. There's not much I don't think I would change about it. Something would be like maybe more time, or just little things. I'm being really nitpicky, but like overall it's really great. And maybe if things could be more specific on the rubrics, or if there was more like time basically to write comments, because I feel like some of the time I just want to get it over with, and so I don't really assess myself. But yeah, that's about it, and that's not to do with the program or anything.
For me, I enjoy the program as a whole really a lot. But if I was to change something, I don't know, this might not be for everyone, but I think it'd be more beneficial for the teachers. But we don't actually have to add a comment when we're self-assessing ourselves. We don't have to. So I think that if, to get the most benefits out of it, we could probably, have to add a comment, which would make us, I suppose, think about our grade a bit more.
Yeah, I agree with Emily. I think it would be better if it's compulsory to add a comment, so everybody's really thinking about it in depth.
I really enjoy the drama program, and like what Emily and Scarlett said, if we could always do the comment when we self-assess, it would be more beneficial.
I also obviously really like it. And if the questions were more tailor-made to the individual person's sort of performance or what they've done throughout the day, I guess we'd have a more personalised view on how we've completed the program, I guess.
I do have more questions, but I know these poor girls, this is outside their school time, so I'm not going to ask them. But can I say, I'm going to insist next time you get a daytime slot, so at the very least you get the benefit of getting out of school for a little bit. At Schoolbox, though, we're very grateful, and we actually would, look forward to hearing more about it, and thank you. Sorry, they're not quite done.
So we just wanted to give you a bit more of a look in terms of what the self-assessment and what the teacher's assessment looks like to the students and also to the teacher. So we can see here that Tara has self-assessed herself as a 75%, but Emma here has been very kind and given her 100%. So there is a 25% difference there, and we do kind of engage in conversations with the students afterwards. Why did you grade yourself 25% lower than what we gave? And that, like we talked before, it does kind of allow students to have that bit of a confidence boost. What we do find generally, I don't believe I've had a student who has given themselves a higher mark than what I've given them so far. So if you are thinking about incorporating this into your school, just think about, like, we're still kind of in the process, we've only done this for a semester, kind of teaching the students about, well, be realistic with yourself, be confident in yourself, and also be interested to see if this is a gender role within here. So if it is a stereotype or a generalisation that girls may actually mark themselves lower than what boys do. So that's actually probably an interesting thing for us to consider as educators within the classroom. So we've had a bit of a think in preparation for this session, if we can kind of impart three things onto you in regards to 3 ways to promote self-reflection within your classroom. And the first that we came up with, it has to be connected to past and future learning. So we ask the students to comment on their previous work and also how they may use those skills or newfound knowledge that they developed throughout that assessment task or that unit of work or that small project, and how they would apply those new things into future work. So self-reflection to us has to be connected to past and future learning. A really important thing for us is it has to be timely. So there's no point in students reflecting 3 or 4 weeks after the end product or even a couple of days. For us, if a practical task has occurred on a Thursday period 4 and we see them next time Friday period 2, that is when we do the big reflective task. So it happens immediately after that. And our reflections had to be knowledge or skills-based, not grade-based, because that's what we've kind of spent a considerable amount of time moving away from. So we have a couple of minutes left, but what we'd like to do, the teacher in us, is a think, pair, share with the buddy next to you. We'd like you to have a think about the following. So how could self-reflection be incorporated to focus on the process, not just the product of a recent unit that you've taught? If you are teachers, and if you aren't teachers, you can just listen to the teachers. So have a chat, and then we might ask for some questions in a moment. So we might give you 3 minutes. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Listening to them going, they're brilliant. And the process that you guys put in place is clearly really working for them. They love it. They do.
It just takes time, a lot of time. It doesn't happen instantaneously.
Yeah, which is what people needed to hear too.
Yeah.
You're saying it's been a 2 year process, and you're like, I tried to make this work yesterday.
It doesn't happen straight away. So what we might do is, I got the 10-minute sign just before. Do you want to get
probably less, to be fair.
Okay, do you want to get a couple of questions from the audience for the girls to finish up?
Yeah, you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'll say maybe 2 questions. We've got time for 2
Sounds good.
questions.
Yep.
I'd like to ask
I was about to be like, are you happy to do that, or would you like me to? I'm like, drama teacher. Love it. Yep.
We did it.
You did great. I looked over and I'm like, Emma looks a bit nervous. and the teachers. Yeah. I went to read a sentence introducing someone before, and I got halfway through and I stopped and I'm going to start that sentence again because that is not coming out like it's written in front of me. So, and that happens.
All right, we might just get your attention back just for a moment. I don't know if I'm on.
Do you want to try this?
All right, we might just get your attention back just for a moment. Thank you. I'm not doing a clap. So we do have time just for a couple of questions that if any one of you would like to ask any of the students or Emma and I a question about self-reflection or self-assessment or the journey that we've been on over the last couple of years. Yes?
How do parents perceive this?
So the assessments for parents is locked down, so they can't get instant access to this, but the students can show the parents at home.
How do they perceive the difference from moving away from grades to the process? How do they perceive that?
Yeah, sure. So obviously still at the end of each semester they still get the written report, but obviously we know that you can only incorporate 500, 600 characters per subject there. So I guess our conversations with parents throughout the year as well as parent-teacher does really focus on what are the students doing now in the classroom and how is that going to help them in their future learning. The parents since kind of 2016, so we started the school in 2016 as a brand new department, and everything the parents have been saying to us is they have really noticed a difference between the growth of their students their girls who are doing drama at the school, and the parents themselves are actually starting to make connections between previous units they've studied and how that's leading them into the future. So although parents are still obviously looking at the grade of it, what we're noticing. Actually, I'm going to backtrack. When we first started, if we gave a student a D, for example, or a low C for a mark, there may have been an email or a phone call from a parent saying, why did my child get this mark? And of course, it is up to the teachers to explain that. But now we have the self-reflection and assessment that if the students have marked themselves the same or even lower than what we have given them, then that almost gives us a basis to go off. The student has believed that they deserve this mark. We've either given this mark or a slightly higher mark. This is a mark that they believe they deserved. So it's not just coming from my judgment, it's coming from their judgment as well. So actually comparing those two things side by side is really, really helpful. And I don't think I've had a parent query on a mark in 18 months. Yeah. So I hope that answers that question. Sorry, I had to backtrack. Yeah.
As a graduate teacher, I'm still practicing grading side of it. And I found that when I did the self-reflection for my music students, I would be looking at how they graded themselves and then I would go to grade them, and I found that sometimes I was like, oh, maybe they did get that mark, I don't know. So how do you guys stick to what you believe and not get influenced by your students?
Yeah, great question, because I guess music and drama, sometimes it can lend itself to a bit of subjectivity here and there. Yeah, there's only so much that we can do to rely on a rubric. A lot of it does come down to teacher judgment. So in that sense, all performance tasks are recorded through Vimeo. So we never mark while we're watching the performance. We will always record, and then we'll go back into our offices, and if there's a group of 4 students in that performance, I'll watch that video 4 times, focusing on the individual student. It does take time, but it does kind of get rid of that subjectivity, so I can actually focus on that individual student at that time. And although I can see how they've marked themselves, all that I'm focusing on in that moment is that video and seeing their 2 to 3 minute performance in that moment. So perhaps video recording in the music classroom could be really beneficial as well.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for sharing so much of your journey today. But this question is probably more for the 5 very impressive young ladies in front of us. Do you, young ladies, feel that you are true partners in your learning growth with the subject teacher?
Definitely. I feel like it's not student and teacher anymore. It's more you're working together to really improve, because throughout the entire term and the topic, basically, you're working with the teacher and they're giving you feedback on every task and they're really helping you. And it's like, and they're not doing anything for you, but they're really, you know, there for you for support, because they just want you to do the very best you can. So yeah, they've been really helpful the entire time.
Just a quick follow-up question, sorry, but do you then, because you're in year 10, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you then have this type of dialogue with your learning mentor, or you would have this conversation around your progress and around your reflections with them, only your subject teachers?
Oh,
So it'll be your house wellbeing coordinator.
oh yes. Yeah, sometimes it kind of depends, because they just assume you're doing really well with the teacher and that relationship is really strong. But you can definitely reach out and have a conversation and like a side-by-side discussion with them if you want. Like, you've got that freedom. So yeah.
Yeah, this information is available to the students' house wellbeing coordinators, so they can track there. But I guess it would only be if, you know, things were going downhill that conversation would happen with them. Yeah. We've got time for one more question. I probably neglected this side of the room. Sorry. Hello. Cool. Can we give the students another round of applause, please?
So big thank you, Ryan, Emma, Emily, Scarlett, Amelia, Kiara, and Chloe. You did an amazing job. I think you got an A+ today in performance and drama.
How you got here.
You can self-assess on that. Thank you on behalf of Schoolbox. We have gifts for all of you. So please, one by one. Thank you. A big clap for the ladies again.